Welcome to another book club session from Crystal Kanata and Holistic Home Journey. We are in the middle of How to Do the Work, which is all about healing trauma, childhood traumas, kind of overcoming your traumas. And I want to let you know that we're going to shift book club. I think we're going to rename it Growth Club, and we're going to do shorter sessions. So for the last couple of weeks, I've been doing like 40 or 60-minute sessions. And the intent at first was that everybody would hop on live and we would kind of like discuss all together. And that hasn't been happening, which is totally fine. But I think the way that you guys are going to get the most value is if instead of focusing on the chapters or the pages that we're reading in the books, we just focus on the lessons in the books. And I can give you shorter lessons more frequently that you can go back and binge watch instead of trying to fit in an hour to rewatch a book club episode. So this is going to be the last book club, but I am going to rename it as Growth Club. And we are still talking about healing, bettering ourselves. We'll do personal growth books, healing books, parenting books, and just really learning together and continuing to grow together. Because I'll say it a million times, I am on this journey too. So I am telling you from my experience and my research and my understanding over the last, I think it's like 4 or 5 years now that I've been on this journey, but I am still learning every single day. And so I love taking you along on the journey. All right, so let's dive in. So last time we sort of talked about what the parent's role is or should be when parenting, and that is to be more of a guide, and that is to really just help the child through developing themselves and be there as that support and be there as that guiding hand of wisdom, right? And so now we're going to talk a little bit about like, what does it look like and why are we having to heal from so much trauma? Like, how do parents behave that are not fulfilling that sort of like guiding role? And so we're going to talk today a lot about sort of how childhood traumas and parenting techniques and all of these things are actually passed down from generation to generation. We talk about generational trauma, but we don't really talk about like hold on. I lost my whole screen here. There you are. We talk about generational trauma. We talk about generational parenting techniques, but we don't really talk about like, how does that come into play? How can the way that I parent my children be a reflection of the way that I was parented? And how can my parents' way of parenting me be a reflection of how they were parented, and back and back and back? And so I want you to know that through this journey, it is really hard sometimes to admit that some of the things that you are dealing with in adulthood could be from your childhood. You know, even those of us who were hit or who felt abuse or who had like really stressful households, right? We still, in a lot of cases, love our parents. And even as adults, we can almost justify their actions because, they were stressed out and they might have been dealing with their own trauma and they, all of these scenarios. And sometimes we will minimize it. We'll basically say like, hey, there's something wrong with me that I'm having all of these issues in adulthood. There's something wrong with me that I'm always reacting to these situations. I can't reflect back and say this was something that stemmed from childhood, because if I do that, I will be disrespecting my family. I will be saying that I don't love my family. I will be hurting my family. And I found myself stuck in that cycle myself, especially in the beginning of my journey. I would have never come on here and said publicly, there were things in my childhood that I think are directly correlated to issues that I'm healing from now. And it really was because I don't want to hurt anybody. And we kind of have to snap out of that. And we have to start to realize that your healing journey, if it hurts somebody else, that's something that they have to work on, right? So if they treated you a certain way, or they, kept you in a certain environment that was abusive, or they, whatever it was, you don't have to keep hiding that and shoving it deeper inside of you to make sure that they stay comfortable. Okay, because not only is that not going to help you, it's not going to help them. Okay, even though it might be uncomfortable for them in the moment to hear it, it's not long term going to help them. And it's definitely not going to help the generations that sort of come after you. So let's talk about, and let's see, there was so much. We're still on chapter 3. There was like so much that I was like, yes, 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 like crying. And, so let's see what passages we can read. So we in this chapter, we're kind of like reading a lot about how our parents might have even unintentionally sort of uh, affected us. And so let me just read it. So even well-meaning parent figures react under the influence of their own unconscious wounds. Instead of offering guidance, they may attempt to control, micromanage, or coerce a child to follow their will. Some of these attempts may be intentioned. And I see that often, right? So I see in the community where people say, I'm hitting my child because I want them to behave, because I don't want them to misbehave in school and get in even worse trouble. Or I am hitting my child because I'm teaching them what time does book club meet? We start at 9:30, so you're right on time. And we are in the community. You can join me on Zoom and even put your camera on if you want. But so we see that in the community all the time, where parents, our parents, or you might be parenting this way, you are sort of trying to control the child. You're trying to micromanage the child. You're trying to stay on top of the child, and it's often not with bad intentions. It's often saying, I need to teach them responsibility. I need to teach them respect. Yes, Eastern. I need to teach them to respect authority. I need to teach them to pick up after themselves. I need to teach them to cook a meal and do their chores and do their homework and be successful, right? We have all this pressure as parents, and we only have that pressure and our experience growing up, and kind of like what society tells us to to guide us. And so sometimes those good intentions of saying, I'm going to teach my children this laundry list, is shown as control, micromanaging, aggression, right? So parent figures may consciously or unconsciously want to keep the child safe and protected from the world, so the child will not experience the pain that they themselves have. And so think about that, right? So if you were made fun of in school, or you were made fun of by your parents, or you were traumatized in some way, maybe there was like sexual trauma, or you felt sexualized, right? Well, all of these things, you might be micromanaging your daughters to, only wear certain clothes. And that might come out as, you better cover up. Like, what are you trying to do? And it's you trying to protect them, right? Or maybe, you were made fun of for your weight. And so you're saying to your children, don't eat that much, only eat this, you can't eat that, you don't want to get fat. And it's not you're trying to hurt them. You are hurting them, but it's not you're trying to hurt them, right? You're trying to protect them. You say, I don't want my child to experience this pain that I experienced. So I'm going to have to protect them in this very aggressive way. And oftentimes that very aggressive way of controlling, micromanaging leaves the child with a lot of trauma. Okay, even when this can seem intentional, these reactions often stem from their own deep-rooted pain, which may not be visible on the surface. This is something that I am definitely learning. Teresa, if you're in the community, you have to have VIP access for book club, so you can watch the recordings. I stream it live on TikTok, but if you want to watch the replays and get all the other content, it's in the VIP membership. So even when this can seem intentional, these reactions also stem from their own deep-rooted pain, which might not be visible on the surface. So I even try to remember this sometimes when I'm on social media and I'm looking at the comments of people, and I'm looking at these videos that you guys tag me in that break my heart. And I'm like, wow, this person is like bragging about how abusive they are. They're bragging about how like they're traumatizing their kids. And it's not because they think they're bragging about abusing and traumatizing their kids. It's because their intentions, even when it doesn't look like they have good intentions, often their intentions are so deep rooted inside of them that even when it looks bad externally, like internally, they really think they're doing the right thing. And so I think what we can take away from that, aside from just like watching how we judge others, is that we are doing the best that we can. We are doing what we think is right with the best of intentions. And that doesn't necessarily mean that we are not causing trauma and perpetuating trauma that has been passed down from generation to generation. We can love our parents, respect our parents, show ourselves grace and understand that we are doing the best that we can with the information that we have and the best intentions for our children. And also recognize that these passed down behaviors and traditional parenting styles and methods of controlling our children are traumatizing. All of those things can be true at the same time, right? We don't have to say, wow, I am not parenting in a way that is best for my child's development and best for my child's self-esteem and best for my child's, confidence. So I must be doing everything wrong and I must be trying to hurt my child. No, no, you are very likely, and the people that you see are very likely doing what they feel is best to protect their children and to help their children. And that's why we really need to remove any stigma around learning. Like, we are learning every single day. We should be learning every single day, because some of these things that we do, and I'm gonna fast forward for a second and read you this line that I'm like, wow, that's really, I think I'm gonna put this on my wall in here. You do not need to be a reflection of their unprocessed trauma. Is that what I wanted to read you? Yeah. So it's like, we can break the cycle. We don't have to continue this on. We don't have to accept this. Oh, no, that's not the line that I wanted to read you. Hold on. I was like, that doesn't make sense. This one. How many aspects of your life have you actually chosen, and how many have you inherited? There, that makes a lot more sense. Right. So, and this is just saying, like, just look at what you're doing. Look at how you're treating your kids. Look at how you are talking to them. Look at how you talk to them around certain situations. Especially look for the high stress situations. Like, if you always have high stress, Teresa, just message me inside the community and I will help you. If you always have high stress around food, look at your potential traumas around food. Are you keeping control over that piece because you either didn't have access to food was a stress for you didn't have money, and so you had to make sure that you were told to always eat everything on your plate because there are starving people? Were you told you were too skinny, told you were too fat? Like, look at your traumas around those things and say, okay, am I making a conscious decision about how I'm parenting my child here, or is this a reflection of my trauma, my past trauma coming through? I'm trying to think of like some other examples where that might come through. Maybe like, leaving the house. Maybe you always got in trouble or were shamed and told you were lazy or you were disrespectful if you got somewhere late. So now maybe like transition to leaving the house is a really stressful thing for you. And you will know it's a stressful thing because you're fighting with your kids. You're feeling like this, you're forgetting things, you're flustered, you're, apologizing and all of these things. It feels stressful in the moment. Okay, why does it feel stressful? Am I handling this how it was handled in my childhood? Can I change the way I'm handling it? Can I reflect and say, okay, I was told these things, but it's not true. And this is how I'm going to kind of, and this is how I'm going to break the cycle around that. So if you want to know where your childhood traumas might be stemming from and where you might be sort of on autopilot with raising your own kids, then you might want to start with the areas in your life, the times in your day that feel most stressful. Is it transitions? Is it eating? Is it bath time? Is it um, going to see friends? Is it screen time? Like, what is it? What are those areas? So oftentimes, and here are some examples that she gives in the book of sort of like the way that parents can project their own pain on us, which really seem like sometimes we don't even think of it. But by saying things like, don't cry, right? Or kind of like withdrawing, like when we're having big feelings. So imagine when you were a kid and you had big feelings about something, if your parent like kind of withdrew and was just like, well, I'll give you something to cry about, or you better stop crying, or I'll give you something to cry about. I know I've heard in my life, and or that's not a big deal, or invalidating. And what this does when we control our child to that micro level that we are like controlling their emotions is we start to teach them not to trust themselves. And that's where a lot of the frustrations in adulthood can come from. It's because we don't trust ourselves. We will be in situations and we will feel a certain way. We want to do a certain thing. I see this in the community as well. You are here. If you are here, you were probably trying to break cycles. You were probably trying to parent differently. You were probably, trying to change some of these inherited behaviors in your life. And sometimes in the beginning of the journey, I know for me anyway, it almost feels like you are being pulled because you have this like generational ties that you want to respect and stick with. And then you have like what you really want and what you feel is best for your family. And because you have been taught throughout your life to not trust yourself and to look externally to know what to do, it feels very stressful to that like higher self, to the truest version of you. And anytime that you feel that stress in your life is a good time to evaluate and say, okay, like, am I actually listening to my gut and saying, you know what, I know what's best for my kids. I know what's best for my family. I see that this isn't working, for my family, not just for you. Because sometimes when I say that, it can be misconstrued, right? People will say, well, I hit my kids because I know what's best for my kids, right? When you say, does this work for my family, right? Then we start thinking about your needs as the parent, right? Your wants as the parent, your child's needs, your child's wants, your child's feelings, right? And so I'm going to guess that like 9.9 times out of 10 your child does not want to be being abused. And so we need to look at that, right? What works for my family? What works for my heart? What feels right without all of this conditioning? And that's really what this journey is about. It's just about like finding your true path outside of all of this stuff that's been put on us from generational passing down. So here's another good one that I liked, another good line. So this emotional loneliness, so talking about sort of being told not to cry and being told like you can't come to me with your big feelings because I'm going to invalidate you, essentially, right? This sort of like translates into that emotional avoidance, shutting down, shaming, disconnecting, right? All of those things in adulthood. So if you were always taught, and I struggle with this too, if you're having big feelings like go to your room, I don't want to see you, like you're being ridiculous, right? Guess what I do now when I'm having big feelings and my husband is like ready there to support me? No, I go in the bathroom, or I go in my bedroom, or I say, you know what, I just want to go upstairs and watch Grays tonight. I don't really want to hang out tonight. You withdraw, right? And so we need to be conscious of that as well. When we are healing, when we are having big emotions, do we truly need to cope in the ways that have always protected us, right? So for me, it was alcohol for a long time. It's still shutting down. It's still not saying about feelings, belittling my own feelings. I do that. I don't know if anybody does that. Like, I'll be so upset about something and I will literally just be like, no, I'm fine. It's okay. It's okay. It's no big deal. Other people have it worse. it could be worse, right? And like belittling your own feelings. Um, just keep an eye on that stuff. Just keep an eye and say, like, is this serving me? You know, is the drinking to numb from it serving me? Is the hiding to numb from it or cope with it serving me? Is the distracting myself and working 80 hours a week so I don't have to think about anything else than work, is it serving me anymore? I think we're going to end there. There's so much in this chapter. I don't want to make these sessions too long. I want you to be able to watch them on replay. So again, this is going to be the last week that we call this book club. We're going to call it instead Growth Club. I think I haven't officially made the change. And so that way, instead of doing super long book club sessions about the whole chapter of the book, I want to break it down into easier to digest pieces that you can watch on replay and really absorb and then implement into your life. I think that's the biggest thing. So assignment for today, and I'm going to come, if you're watching on TikTok, I'll come do questions in a moment. Assignment for today is going to be, and you can do this in a journal or you can just kind of like mentally take note. I want you to think of one or two places in your day to day, okay, that you see a lot of stress. And again, meal times, bath time, transition to leaving somewhere, going to somebody's house, getting your kids ready for the day. Like it could be anything. It could be anything, right? Just look in your day to day. What is a constant struggle every single day? And then I want you to reflect on that and say, okay, well, what did this thing look for me as a child? What are the things that I was told surrounding this event or surrounding this time of day or this transition, or these feelings? And is what I learned and how I was treated in childhood what's playing out right now in my life and feeling so stressful? Or am I actually taking control over it? And you might find that you don't have a lot of control over it and that you are just acting out of sort of these default patterns. And once you can identify that, and I don't want you to look at every single part of your day, pick 1 to 2. Actually, pick one, just pick one. Okay, and start there. And then start saying, okay, how can I take control of this? So in a journal or in your head, you're going to say what times of day or interactions, what are like my most stressful times in my day to day. You're going to reflect on how that might be tied back to how you were treated in those moments in childhood or how those moments were portrayed to you in childhood. And then you're going to make a plan for how you can make changes that feel authentic for your life now and are not just keeping up with what was passed down to you, either consciously or unconsciously, subconsciously. Okay, I'm going to end here. I will see you next week. We will still record on Sundays live because I want to be able to, I want you guys to be able to hop on and ask questions and participate. But those changes that I talked about will come this week. Enjoy the rest of your day and make sure that you post in the community, like reflect, use the community as your journal. Let us help you. We are all going through this journey together.